This is Sports Jam. I'm Doug Doyle. Newark's favorite son, Jerry Izenberg, the only media member who has covered every Super Bowl for the Star Ledger, the first 53 in person, and an achievement accomplished by only Jerry Izenberg and the late Jerry Green. Well, Jerry Izenberg has just released his 16th book and second novel, Damn You, Josh Gibson, a ghost story from Admission Press. And it's my honor to welcome back to Sports Jam for a third time the great Hall of Fame writer who at 95 is celebrating his 75th newspaper career. Jerry Izenberg, great to see you again.
Well, it's great to be anywhere in my age, but this is one of my favorite places.
I certainly appreciate that. And you're joining us from your home in Nevada again. Well, you've done it, Jerry. You've kept your promise to the late baseball great Monty Irvin, who back in
Yeah, yeah,
2007 told
yeah.
you, hey, you can't die, Jerry, before telling the story about the Negro Leagues and the teams like the Newark Eagles. He said, listen, what I mean is you can't die because you're the last writer to see us play in the Negro Leagues. If you go, who will tell people about us? I mean, the kids won't even believe our leagues ever existed. And
Yeah, but
so,
we created a kid who can tell them about it.
yeah, it's a wonderful story, a novel that Damn You, Josh Gibson, a ghost story, is told from the perspective of a couple of main characters and the ghosts of some of the greatest baseball players ever. Now, the old baseball player's name in your novel, Jeffrey Jefferson Jr.,
Yeah,
he's referred to as Pop-Up, and his days when he was playing, in his mind, he was Jeff the Jet. His grandson, Jeff, is the old ball player's grandson, and the old ball player's daughter is Effa, named after Effa Manley. It's a wonderful journey through the Negro Leagues, told through the story of these characters. I would imagine this was so much fun for you, Jerry.
it was, and it's got me to say something that's been on my mind for a long time. There's a canard that Josh Gibson was the Black Babe Ruth. I saw him once, maybe a couple of times. Actually, Ruth was the white Josh Gibson. Josh Gibson, the only man ever to hit a ball out of the original Yankee Stadium. Josh Ruth couldn't do it. Mantle couldn't do it. Maris couldn't do it. He did it. And then he became the first man, and only two men have ever done it. The other was Joe Adcock, to hit a home run in the center field bleachers at the Polo Grounds 510 feet away.
See, you got to see these players, you know.
Yes, I did.
I got to talk to a few of them. I got to talk to Monty Irvin, and Larry Doby loved WBGO. He was a great jazz fan and would call the radio station. Gary Walker made a comment about the Cleveland Indians, and he got a phone call from this listener who said, I think you got one of the names wrong on the players for the Indians. And Gary goes, who is this? He goes, it's Larry Doby. And so Larry and Gary said, well, you would know, Larry. But so we know he was a regular listener of WBGO. But you got to not only write about these players, you got to watch them perform. The Negro League's history is fading fast. A lot of people have written books, but nobody can tell the story like Jerry Izenberg. Why did you want to write a novel instead of a nonfiction book?
Well, first of all, I was forced into it because, well, forced into it because Monty said you're going to write, but also I was forced into the form, the novel form, because the old man, Pop, he's Jet Jefferson. He's really three people that I combined for different reasons. They were real people. Of course, if a lawyer calls, they weren't, but anyway, they were. One was had a cruel fate at the hands of our hero, but he got his revenge. That was the third baseman on the Eagles,
Ray Dandridge.
yeah, Ray Dandridge. I'm sorry. Dandridge slid home against Walker, and Dandridge indicated that it was deliberate. Walker never commented on it, but broke his leg. That's what happens to Pop in this thing. But what didn't happen to Pop, Dandridge came back the next year. And in the book, you will learn that he lived rent-free in Josh Gibson's head because he would move along, the third baseman, he'd move along closer to second, further to the front, wherever he moved. He'd yell at Gibson. He'd say, "You're the great hitter. You can hit the ball down my throat. Why don't you try, Josh? Why don't you try?" Well, Josh could easily hit the ball to the opposite. He was livid. So he kept trying to ram this baseball down Dandridge's throat. And Dandridge would, no matter how far out of position he was, because the bat would follow him, he'd go on his knees. And he'd rise up to his knees with the ball and he'd show it to Gibson. He'd say, "Run, Josh, run." Bing! He'd get him by a step. And one day, Gibson let the bat go. He didn't hit him, but he sure as hell tried.
Continue with the other guys.
Okay. The second one is Larry Doby. And the third one is Monty Irvin. Because this book, it's fiction, but it's not. There were 6 players and Effa Manley, who was the general manager of the Eagles, who gave me every single anecdote in this book. So all the stories are true. I thought that, okay, I take this former hero, I mix him with Max Manning, who was at least as smart as Monty Irvin, and that's the greatest praise I could give him, and Larry Doby, who is everybody and went through the hell. And I mix the 3 of them up, and they appear in different ways through this guy in this book. I said, some people have written, there was a wonderful book written called Only the Ball Was White. It was a very good book about black baseball. There have been many, but a couple I've read. And there have been books written about individuals. My goal was to take this ghost who becomes believable in my mind. I think I must have been eating mushrooms or something when I wrote it, but in my mind, he becomes real because he's seen everything. He can tell you what happened. And the anecdotes in this book, to my knowledge, almost all of them are been told to me by the guys. I never read them anywhere.
And really the only person that you have mentioned, you mentioned Ray Dandridge, you mentioned Monty Irvin, you mentioned Larry Doby, and you mentioned Max Manning. Max Manning is the only one who's not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, correct?
Max Manning on another team would have been the #1 pitcher. But there was a guy who was #1. Nobody could. But I will say this: I was a little kid when I saw the Blacks play the most. They left when I was 20, I think. But they had look. Either Monty or Larry told me. I think it was Monty. Look, I'm not bitter because I knew I wasn't going to go anywhere. I thought, well, he did, of course. I thought that. So therefore, we played the game for one reason, the joy of playing this game. He said to me, I had never been happier than sitting in the back of the bus, heading south for spring training or heading for an exhibition game or whatever, heading anywhere. We would sing, we would tell poems, we would make fun of each other because we played the game for the joy of it. We weren't trying to get to the majors. We all got there by accident. And the proof of that was, in the book, there's a meeting in Meeting Room O at the Roosevelt Hotel, which is designed by the owners. Never admit you won't let a black in. Make them think you're going to, but we know what we want to do. Paul Robeson went to the meeting to represent the black newspaper. There was a move on by now. By 42, the war was still on. A. Randolph, the head of the Porters Union, the most powerful black union in the world, probably, because all the porters were black. Effa Manley was involved in this too. They had a parade on Fifth Avenue during the war and this, to try to get blacks in the majors. And the Communist Party, the Daily Worker, was involved also, the newspaper. And the signs read, "They can stop bullets, why can't they stop baseballs?" She was a hell of a feminist. She started a strike against Jacob's department store in Harlem before she met Abe, before she was in baseball. It's beautiful, beautiful woman. And the signs that she carried said, "Don't buy where you can't work." And they won the strike in those days. It's incredible.
And Effa Manley is in the Baseball Hall of Fame as well.
She's the first woman.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this about Effa. Effa did not like Branch Rickey. Effa despised Branch Rickey. Now, people say, well, he's the father of blacks in baseball. Not exactly. When Branch Rickey was the general manager for the Cardinals, he had a black section in his stands in St. Louis. Now he signs Jackie Robinson, Fancy Dan Bankhead, Don Newcomb from the Newark Eagles, and one other that I don't recall. But he signs him without paying a dime to any of the black owners because he knew they wouldn't say anything. They didn't want to be in the way.
Mm.
Well, one lady did. Effa Manley, whatever Effa wanted, Effa got.
Yeah, she was great at negotiations, wasn't she?
Yeah, and she was pretty good with some of the players too. But that's another story, and I won't get into that. But
Well,
I'll tell
I'm
you,
just so you know, I'm wearing Don Newcomb's Newark Eagles jersey. Well, at least a
I
replica.
have Larry Doby's inside. I would have put it on.
Yet,
Number 14, Larry Doby.
my great friend Jonathan Shamin actually gave me this jersey, and you see, I'm wearing the Homestead Grays hat
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
in honor of you, Jerry, and your knowledge in this new book.
Well,
That
it's
is
got to be an
wonderful.
honor. It's got to be an honor of Josh. You know that.
Yeah.
Josh was Josh.
And you know why he's special to me, and you even have a whole chapter in your book. I'm from the Pittsburgh area, and there is a quote in your book that talks about Pittsburgh was the soul of black baseball.
Absolutely, because they had two teams. Other towns did, but these two teams lasted from beginning to end. The Homestead Grays and the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Everybody thought the Crawfords were named after a man named Crawford. They weren't. The owner of the Crawfords won the Crawford Cafe in a crap game, and he thought he would give them some publicity, so the Pittsburgh Crawfords were born. Now, the thing about it is, neither Josh nor the great pitcher Satchel, neither one of them signed contracts. So at the end of each season, they would jump from the Grays to the Homestead to
Pittsburgh Crawfords.
the other Pittsburgh team, the Crawfords, or would jump back. That's why they made a lot of money. They were the only black players that made money. Monty Irvin wound up in Mexico because he wanted $25 more a month from Mrs. Manley to get married to Dee, his childhood sweetheart. And she wouldn't give it to him. She said, well, you know I can't afford that. He goes to Mexico. He wins the home run title. He wins the RBI. And this is when those two brothers, the Pascal brothers, raided. It was before they raided the majors. First, they raided the blacks and brought them down there. They got a right-handed pitcher from the Cardinals when the white guy started to jump. He goes down there. Dandridge comes to bat, single to left. Dandridge comes to bat, single to right. Dandridge comes to bat, single up the middle and almost takes off this pitcher's head. Max Lanier. And their time, since it's Mexico and everything away to mañana, they have a very long seventh inning stretch. So he leaves the Mexico City dugout. That was the big team, but the team that two owners favored was the Azules, the Blues, and of course they would win all the time. But anyway, Lanier goes down there and he says, "Who are you guys?" He's got three or four black players. Who I've never seen heard of you guys. Oh, we've been hanging around. Where have you been? Where have you played? Well, we've been right here, just hanging around, waiting so we knew you'd come. We could do a little wrestling with you. And that was the game. That was the game when the Azules were losing to Mexico City, and the Pascals couldn't tolerate that. So the oldest Pascal, who is the brains and the money, he comes onto the field. He walks right onto the field. Monty's coming to bat, bases loaded, losing by 2. Monty. Oh, so he signed the paychecks. Monty was so dummy. He, timeout. He walks over to see him. He talks to him. The catcher is Roy Campanella from the Philadelphia Stars. He says, "What was that crap all about?" He said, "Well, I'll tell you. Could you groove a pitch for me? Could you signal him to groove? Not in this lifetime. I'll never do that. But if you do it and I hit it out, I get $500. He said, "You get up and take your swings because he's going to strike you out." Monty hits the home run. He's running, as he gets to third, he notices the little guy running out of the stands waving $500. Runs up to him, gives it to him. Monty goes back in the batter's box, and Campanella says, "You're the luckiest son of a bitch that ever lived." And he says to Campy, "Don't be that way." And he gives him half. That was Monty. That was Campy. You know, the great quote, the greatest quote anybody. And it wasn't an American sports writer. It was a Cuban sports writer. These guys were nomads. When the season ended, it was a short season. Then they played exhibition. Then they all scattered. Venezuela, Mexico City, um, uh, Puerto Rico, a number of teams in Puerto Rico, Cuba. They were nomads because they knew in those places the sun shined. There were very few rainouts, and they could keep playing the game, which they loved so much. Dandridge goes to Cuba. A Cuban sports writer. I wish I had written it. I love Dandridge because my father was a minor league ball player. Not very good, but he was. And he was built like Dandridge. Second baseman would field ground balls off his chest. That's what Dandridge would do sometimes. So I love Dandridge. So Dandridge, the Cuban writes, and my father was bull-legged. Ray Dandridge they called him El Diablo, the devil, because he said you could pass a freight train. He was so bull-legged between his legs, but not a ground ball.
Let's talk more about Damn You, Josh Gibson, A Ghost Story. Now, when I was reading this, and the young boy who is learning about the Negro Leagues from Pop, his grandfather, I thought maybe there was a little bit of the young boy, maybe a Jerry Izenberg who was talking to his dad Harry about learning about the Negro Leagues and watching what was
My
going on.
dad did not know much about the Negro League.
Really?
Took me to a game once, but didn't know.
So the little boy in the story reflects not at all from a young Jerry then, right?
Yeah, in some ways, I guess. I didn't realize it till you brought it up. You know, that's why I don't read other books about the subject I'm going to write because I don't want it to sneak into the manuscript. But you're probably right. I got to tell you how I discovered black baseball. Charlie Mintz, a very famous nationally rabbi, he was the warm-up speaker for Martin Luther King at the Million Men on the Mall. He bar mitzvahed me, and he hammered some pretty good lessons into me. Anyway, Charlie was a Giants fan, as I was because of my father. Charlie taught me how to sneak into Rupert Stadium where the Bears played. Right underneath the Wolf's Head oil sign on top of right field, there was an opening. We would do it all the time. I probably sent the Avon Avenue record for truancy because I thought I could learn more in the ballpark than I could in the seventh and eighth grades, and I did. So now I sneak in one day, and there's a strange team playing. The Bears aren't there; they're on the road. I didn't. I used to read the paper like the Bible, know when they're home, and no school today. I'm off. So I go there. There's a team out there. They got blue hats. The Bears had the Yankee colors. They got blue hats with a script E on it in lighter blue. And the shirt says Eagles. And they're all black. I didn't know who they were. So I said, I'll ask somebody who they are. I go up to this guy, an older man. He must have been about 30 years old. I was about 9 or 10. I said, who are these guys? He said, oh, they're the Newark Eagles. You never heard of the Newark Eagles? They're the pride and joy of all blacks in Newark. Stick around. You're going to see some baseball the way it should be played. Many days after that, I was the only white kid in short pants in the ball. That's how I learned about the Eagles.
And I'm so glad that you snuck in because now we're the beneficiaries of all that knowledge and all those experiences. And it's helped make you one of the greatest sports writers of all
Well,
time.
that's very kind of you to say. Don't overrate me.
It's the truth. I'm an emotional guy, Jerry. So as you can see behind me, I have Roberto Clemente jerseys. And as I'm getting to the end of this novel, it's such an emotional ending. I'm not going to tell you what it is, folks, because you have to read the book. But I'm curious, when you're writing, do you know this ending when you start to write it, do you know the ending before, or do you come to a point and you go,
I
this is
started
how?
thinking about there's a letter in the book written by Bill Veck's daughter-in-law and Mike, the son, was a big help to me. And I can't say enough about Veck. I knew him. I worshiped him. He did something to me he did to everybody. Bill Veck lost his leg on Tarawa during World War II. He had a wooden leg. And when he'd interview for the first time, he'd casually take the leg off, set it up, and use it as an ashtray because he was a chain smoker. I mean, the way he and Effa were born for each other. When Effa called, a lot of people don't know this. I don't know whether you do or not. Well, you do. You read the book. Monty Irvin was supposed to be the first black. It wasn't supposed to be Jackie. Monty was a better player in the Negro League than Jackie. Learned a lot on the way when he got into the Dodger chain. But Beck had two different guys who never met each other, never knew each other, scouting Doby. One guy was his best baseball man, his best baseball guy. The other guy was Lena Horne's ex-husband because he knew show business. And Beck wanted to know, where does Doby go after the games? Is he a womanizer? Is he a drinker? So the two guys never even knew they were both in the park because one guy was black.
Hmm. It's interesting that you say that because I had Monty Irvin and Jimmy Heath talk to each other on one of the very first sports jams that I ever had. And I talked to both of them, and they talked about how the entertainment business and the ball players, the black entertainers and black baseball, intertwined. Ernie Banks would have people come and they talk, and there would be Sarah Vaughan sitting at the table with all of them, and they're all fighting for her attention during the evening. So yes, there's always been that synergy. I have to ask you, as you were putting this book together, how emotional did you get?
There were sections when I became the little white kid in short pants in the ballpark, the only one. A lot of memories there. A lot of memories with Monty and Larry and Max. But the most interesting one, he's in the book. There's a scene in the book when Leon Day is dying. And Max Manning, his buddy, knows it. And he gets in the car and he drives to Baltimore to be with him in the hospital. And they're talking about how sad it is that his wife, Leon's wife, has one kidney and she's operating a forklift because she's not eligible for any pensions. Because unless you played in the majors starting in 1947, well, there were only two people in 1947. Who the hell were they kidding? So they're talking about that, and in comes a nurse with a baseball and a white guy. And this Mr. Doyle, he is the baseball writer for the Baltimore Sun. He's got something to tell you. He said, it gives me great, great pleasure to tell you you've been elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, to the very end, Leon was a realist and a joker, and Max was the perfect audience. I think that's why they got to be friends. He turns to Max and he winks, turns back and he says, well, I guess that's nice. Now, the white guy says, but listen, I have to ask you a question. You might find it offensive. Please don't. It's a question any reporter would ask you. Does this make up for not playing in the major leagues? He turns back to the other guy and he winks and he laughs. And then he turns back with a straight face, points his finger at the white guy and says, young man, you have been seriously misinformed. I played in the big leagues. I don't know whether those white boys could have played in ours.
What a great,
That's in the book.
yeah, what a great response. You know, we're talking about this wonderful novel that Jerry has put together, Damn You, Josh Gibson, a ghost story. I have to think back to when I'm seeing, you know, and reading about the ghosts. It's almost like a Christmas Carol where the ghosts come back and find some history. So is there any connection to
As
that?
Muhammad Ali used to say to me, you're not as dumb as you look. Where do you think the, of course, there was no Tiny Tim, unfortunately, but you know. But yeah, the Christmas Carol and for Christmas. Well, I loved the Christmas Carol as a little kid, you know.
So that gave you the idea of the ghost kind of thing.
Well, it gave me, yeah. The more I pushed different ideas in my head, my goal was to tell the black story through the Black Ghost, a series of Black Ghosts. I don't think anybody's ever tried to do it that way. You either tell the story of the league or you tell the story of the players. But I had stories that I felt almost nobody had. My favorite chapter in this book was Bronzeville. Now, no, I don't think anybody listening to this show ever heard of Bronzeville. Bronzeville was Sugar Hill in Harlem. It was the streets around the hotel in Newark, where the Eagles, who didn't live in Newark, stayed during the season. It was there was the Grand Hotel in Newark was a black-owned hotel. Very few whites went there. It was almost a privilege if you were white to go there. The black writers, the black poets, the black captains of industry, the black preachers who were nationally known. You would find people like Sarah Vaughan in there. The Grand Hotel, every young, starstruck black young lady, 20, 22, would go to that hotel and have dinner in the dining room because the Eagles ate at the table next to them. And if they if they didn't, and they knew them by numbers, most of them, because there were no names on the back. If they didn't know the guy, like if they wanted to talk to Dobie, and I'm going to say right up front, I know that I doubt they ever did. He was really a marriage in a million. So, but anyway, if they want to talk to him, they'd get to the pager and they'd say, "Hey, number 14, come on over here. I want to meet you." There was a great guy. I wish I could remember his name. I wrote it so long ago. This book, by the way, was rejected 3 times and was written about 15 years ago, before I wrote Dobie.
Mm.
And there was a first baseman who preceded. They had Mule Suttles, great first baseman. They would scream, "Kick, Mule, kick." He had more home runs in the league one year than Josh. He could hit. But there was a guy before him, very popular. The Eagles were never booed. Never. They could do anything, they would never be booed. On this day, this guy tried to make first to second to first double play and threw the ball into left field. And the Eagles, in a big game, and the Eagles, the fans were on their feet booing this guy. He's coming into the dugout with his head down after the inning, really. And he hears these familiar voices and he looks up. There's a young lady and an older lady. The older lady was a madam. The young lady was the star performer at a local house of prostitution. And they're saying, "That's okay, baby. We still love you. We still love you." That's how much. You know what I never forgave the housing authority for building these concrete coffins. They affected me as well as the blacks, because the front stoop was, hey, Jews were not welcome in many fraternities or many places in those days. I was born in 1930. And blacks certainly weren't welcome in non-black places. The front step was our fraternity house. We talk Mickey, Willie, or the Duke. Who's better? Come on. And we'd fight. And the same thing would happen with them, Monty or Larry, because they were the two guys who won every department on the Eagles. But there was another, I started to tell you, you asked me who Max Manning was. And I said Max would have been a great pitcher. Max was one of those guys that had the cool, white baseball mentality slammed in his face. He's pitching, he's warming up before a game. Now remember, Max Manning, when he was in high school in Pleasantville, New Jersey, some scout in Detroit saw a newspaper clipping. He had 9 no-hitters. I'm going to go out to New Jersey, take a look, and I'll bring up another scout with me. They went, "Will we be welcome?" "Oh, sure, come on. Which one is Manning?" He's the young black kid over there with the big high kick, which he always had. And the Detroit scouts left the arena.
Mm.
That same day, the manager or the coach of the high school team, he had been a player in the Federal League, the league that the players formed to go against the owners. And he had played in that league. And he was a tough guy. You had to be a tough guy. Well, now he's on the field. It's true stories. The scout has left. Scouts have left. 4 white guys have surrounded the manager, who is white, the coach who's white. "We didn't say anything when you put this kid on the team. He's only 1, so that's okay. But all of our kids can pitch. He's not going to pitch ahead of our kids." And he said, "If I decide to pitch any of your kids, you're not going to see it, because you're getting the hell out of this ballpark right now, or I will throw you out."
Mm-hmm.
He always warmed up Manning. Well, Manning, I got to tell you the kind of pitcher Manning was. And then they really screwed him. He just got better from high school, obviously. He went to college with Monty. They both went to Lincoln University, black college in Pennsylvania. And he left college to pitch like Monty left, you know. Now he's warming up. Integration is here. There's like 6, 7 black players. He's warming up in Rupert Stadium, and I spent so much, I could draw you a diagram of that stadium. There's a low wall. First of all, they were not the first base dugout. They were the third base dugout. Why, I don't know. There's a low wall that goes from the dugout all the way, all the way down to the foul line. It was made deliberately low so guys could reach in the stands and catch balls. The guy who used to own the Cuban X Stars, now you got to understand this about the Negro National League. American League was a little different, but the Negro National League, everybody was a numbers guy. Every owner had a numbers one. Abe had the Brooklyn Eagles named after the newspaper. They died there. He brought them in. His business was in Jersey City, but Newark was the biggest city, so he brought them to Newark. That's how the Eagles got there. And he didn't want to manage. He didn't want to talk strategy. He wanted to go to obscure places where only blacks played baseball and find a kid and then send him in to the manager. He's playing for my team now. That was his goal. So Effa ran everything. She was the bookkeeper. She was the secretary of the Negro National League. And when she wanted to get her way, this is what she did. After Jackie was signed, she went to Abe and said, "We're going to be out of business in 2 years." Abe said, "We're going to stay here for those 2 years. And then if I agree with you, we'll fold. We'll sell and move." So now it's happening. Because Effa once told me, she said, "I saw it happening. I saw the handwriting because our fans were going to save up their money to go to Philadelphia to see Jackie or to go to Cincinnati to see Jackie. They were going to leave us." So she brought that up at the meeting. And Gus Green says, "Effa, don't start that crap again. We're not going to put any more money into these clubs. We don't have to. We open the doors to people come. So don't start that." She breaks into tears. She's hysterical. 2 teardrops are rolling down her face. And Gus Greenlee says, "Please don't do that. I can't stand to see you do that. Don't do." "All right, we'll put the money in." Then she said, "Now the next item on the agenda," she turned that waterworks off like, that's what Effa could do. And she was, they signed Dobie when Dobie was in high school. Manning was nearsighted. Manning, when he put the glasses on, he looked like the Japanese general in a World War Z movie with the milk bottles. Then when he came out to warm up, if there was a rookie going to hit against him, the catcher would give him the high side. He'd wind up, and he used this windmill windup. So he'd get cranking it up. And he'd throw the ball over his head and hit the wall. His nickname was Dr. Cyclops because of the glasses. And the catcher would be, "Look, you're a rookie and I don't want you to get hurt. Don't crowd the plate." Cyclops would put that ball right through your eyeball. So the guy would move off. Bing, bing, bing. 3 outside strikes, go sit down. That's how good Manning was. They were all numbers guys. But this guy was a real thug. He had a record for other things. He owned the Cuban X Stars, who played at Hinchcliffe Stadium as a home field in Paterson, New Jersey. And Manning, come here. So Manning leans over this little wall. "You want to play for the Giants?" "Oh, don't do that to me." He was a scout for the Giants now. "They don't know anything about you. I know what you can do. I want you in Jersey City Thursday. You'll probably have to pitch 2 games. The pitching staff is so lousy, 1942, you're going to be the Giants. Meet me in the Stadium Tavern. And I am proud to say I am probably the last living person who ever had a drink in the Stadium Tavern, but it was a block away from the ball. And I was underage when I had the drink. Okay, so now he walks into the place. He sees him sitting in the back, sits down. So I want you there on Thursday. He said, will you tell Mrs. Manning? He said, why? I ain't telling her anything. None of her business. Well, I'm under contract to her. That's the kind of person Max was. And he said, you don't want to play for the Giants? Goodbye. And he walked out. And that's as close as Max ever got to playing in an integrated game. A professional integrated. Now, last thing, his arm goes bad. He pitches with his head for a year. Goes back to college. Gets his degree. Becomes a middle school teacher for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And builds his own house in Pleasantville. And I know he built it because the living room floor was crooked, and I was on that living floor many, many times. So Max was really unusual. But what's really unusual was the guy ahead of Max, Leon Day. When I rate my peer, and I was a little kid when I saw it, so I'm probably full of crap, but I rate the three greatest right-handed pitchers I ever saw in no order: Don Drysdale, Gibson from the Cardinals, and Leon Day. Leon Day wins 17 years, or 17 games the year they win the Little League World Series. Not the Little League, the Little World Series, it's called, American Association against the Newark and International League. But he doesn't miss a game. Why? Because he's a 330, 340 hitter. So every game, he never sat down all year until the last game of the Little World Series.
And Leon Day's in the Hall of Fame now too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have another story. You know, Max was assigned to the Richmond Air Base. There's no Air Force. There was the Army Air Force in World War II. And he had a captain. You know, all the black companies had white captains and black soldiers. And he had a guy who didn't like him because Max could speak in three-syllable words. And this guy was a Southern cracker. He never met a grit he didn't like. So he got on him all the time. Uppity. He's uppity. Now the commander general says, hey, any of your black guys can play ball? I don't know. I'll ask him. He finds out. They're all telling him Manning is the best pitcher he will have. And whoever they're going to play against won't have a pitcher of his quality. He goes to Max, puts his arm around him now after all the trouble. In fact, so he puts his arm around him and says, you're going to be my ace pitcher. And Max says, I don't think so. And he says, what do you mean you don't think so? That's an order. I don't care if it's an order. I don't care if it comes from the president. I ain't pitching for you. He puts him in a stockade for being disobedient. Max doesn't know his wife is on a bus coming down to Richmond, Virginia to surprise him. They get there. The white officer says, you can't see him. He's in a stockade. Go home. She has to go back on the bus and go home. Later on, Max is driving gasoline. They weren't combat soldiers to the very end. Max is driving the Patton. And you know how fast Patton was going. And he's trying to keep up with Patton. Now tell me, who is a better American, the white lieutenant or Max Manning? He was there on D-Day. Leon Day was there on D-Day. Yogi Berra was there on D-Day.
his jersey behind me there. That's his Newark
I see it right there.
Bears
Yeah, I
jersey.
see it right there.
Yeah.
Uh,
So before I let you go, congratulations
oh, thank you,
on this
thank you.
novel. It's a wonderful journey through the Negro Leagues, told from someone who knows better than anybody else on this planet, Jerry Izenberg. Now, something you also know about, this is Super Bowl week, and you have covered all these Super Bowls.
Well,
So
I in person first 53.
the
Two
first
of us
50,
did the first 53. Nobody else can do it because they didn't do the first one. I have done the seven since because I can call anybody and I'll get a call back. So I write all week long. Now, what I decided also is I'm not there. I don't see the little things. I'm going to write the history that I know of the Super Bowl this week. And that's what I'm writing this week. Super Bowl history as seen through my eyes. I'll be the ghost. And then the last day, which hasn't come out yet. So I'll give you the story before we run it. Today is Wednesday. Friday will be my pick.
very good. So, you know, you've been writing about this, but I have to ask you, can you imagine? Because I remember when I talked to Dave Robinson about playing for the Green Bay Packers in Super Bowl two, what it was like then, and you were there covering the Super Bowl, the
I wrote
second.
about it. I wrote about Super Bowl two this week.
So he talked about when I talked to him at the Newark Museum, actually, when we spoke several years ago, what a difference it was for Super Bowl two to now to Super Bowl 60. What are your thoughts about how the Super Bowl has changed over the years? You saw it
Well,
in its purest form.
well, the first thing I will tell you is I am proud to say that of the 53 Super Bowls I was at, I never saw a halftime show. I was always writing it, and if I wasn't, I'd think of something to write because uh, it's so far. They made it a semi-religious festival, right? You got to go if you can get a ticket. It's incredible. I mean, and it's not good. It's not good. Who was, I don't know, I don't remember. You remember the Patriots were losing by 21, 25 points because the halftime show burned out the electricity. It became more important than the game, not to the guys who were playing it. I'll tell you a quick story that I wrote this week. In those days, the NFL Gestapo was not really formed. So the first 6 years, I could be in guys' rooms, interview them. I can't even get in a hotel now, but I could, right? I'm having lunch 2 days before the game with E.J. Holub, middle linebacker, Kansas City Chiefs, known as the Beast. And I say to him, are you nervous about this game? He puts his hands out like that. He says, feel my palms. I said, they're sweating. He said, they damn well better sweat. I'm going to tell you something. If we win this game, we get $15,000. That's tip money to them, the ones who tip. Um, we get $15,000. And my wife has already spent it. You're damn right my hands are sweating.
So
That was one of my favorite.
couple of quick
The-
questions about the Super Bowl coverage that you've done through the years, since this
yeah,
is indeed Super Bowl week. What was your favorite interview about Super Bowl? What player, coach?
I'm trying. It's hard. There are a couple. My favorite interview was Al Davis away from the field.
Hmm.
Not, I never said a word about the game. Now you got to picture the Doral Beach Hotel. At that time, before a certain man bought it, it was a class hotel. And there's a chandelier in the elevator. This is where Roselle said he would help me write the book about him. But that was much later. I'm standing there with about 4 or 5 other guys. We got our back. There's an open staircase. You know what I mean by that? You can see through the slats
Hmm.
going up to the second floor of the banquet department. Facing us is Al Davis. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do to Pete Roselle's boy, Vince Lombardi, on Saturday. They're going to try to run that sweep we're going to stick that sweep up the rash. We're going to take Henry Jordan if he pulls out to go left and knock his ass on the ground. After that, we're going to stomp on them. We're going to. And suddenly he realizes, got no audience. They're all looking up through the spaces in the stairs. A gorgeous girl is walking up those stairs without underwear on. He realizes he sees what we have seen. I don't know if he knew what it was, but he saw what we saw. And he said, you guys are disgusting. You know the Super Bowl is in 2 days. And he ended the interview. That was a pretty good interview.
I would imagine. And what has been your favorite Super Bowl to cover?
You got to remember this. You almost have to do it by eras because who is the best ball player? Who's the best? The game is different every era. Name a Super Bowl, of course, that was great. That was fabulous. My favorite football game was not in the Super Bowl. It was the Ice Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Ice Bowl, it was below zero.
And you were there?
Of course. If it happened, I was there.
I love it.
My mother used to say, you remind me of horse crap. You're all over.
What did you wear that game?
Not enough. Not enough. Now they're going to do us a favor. In those days, they didn't have the infrared heaters. They had these outboard motors. They bring one and they're going to pull a cord. And I said, wait a minute. I wasn't at Buchenwald, but I learned the lesson. Nobody starts that thing in the express box. Take it outside and throw it away. They gave me a cup of hot chocolate. I've never had a cup of frozen chocolate in my hand. Now the game, first of all, everybody thinks Lombardi was a genius for running the play over again. He didn't run the play. He didn't call the play. Jerry Walker was supposed to make a block to play before. They're on a 1 yard line.
Jerry Kramer, you mean?
Jerry Kramer, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jerry Kramer. And he falls on his ass. 4th down now. Lombardi. Field goal team. Chandler will kick it. They'll be tied. They'll win in overtime, maybe. Starr comes tearing over it. No, go back. Call the same play. Lombardi says, Jerry, he can't keep his feet up. What's the matter with you? He promised me, and I believe him, he's going to make that block. He slipped. All right.
So Bart Starr was the one that really said, let's do it then, right? The quarterback
and
of the Packers.
And they win. Now they win. Now the first thing I do is somebody's got a flask. I take 2 gulps. I finish its flask. It doesn't do any good. I'm looking at the field. Now they had wooden goalposts in those days. They had just redone Lambeau Field. And they tore them down. Now there's a kid out there with a hacksaw. Enterprising little kid, reminded me of me when I was a kid. He's going to saw off pieces of the goalposts and sell them.
That was a good idea.
He starts to saw. An hour and a half later, I'm finished writing. I'm getting ready to leave. He hasn't cut the first piece yet. That's how cold it was.
Wow. And that's where we're going to end this interview because no one can tell a story like Jerry Izenberg as he waits for this week's Super Bowl 60, yet another one that he will cover. This time it won't be in person, but he'll still be covering it. But his latest book, just released this week, is really something that you'll definitely want to pick up. And it's either you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere you'll find the book. It's Damn You, Josh Gibson, A Ghost Story. It's his novel that takes you on this wonderful journey through the Negro Leagues. It's always my honor and pleasure to talk with you, Jerry. Thanks for being on SportsJam.
I wouldn't miss one. You're the best interviewer of all of them.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the game.
I will.
SportsJam is a WBGO News production. You can hear all the past shows by going to wbgo.org/sportsjam or wbgo.org/studios. You can also hear SportsJam with Doug Doyle on the NPR list of podcasts. Until our next SportsJam session, I'll see you at the game.